You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the third hour of our program. It's Thursday, but we are right now live going to do Brunch with Bernie today instead of tomorrow. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us, live from South Carolina. Senator, South Carolina?
South Carolina. How are you, Tom?
I'm great. I hope you are well.
I am well. It is hot here in Columbia, South Carolina. Yesterday, I was in North Carolina in the morning and am very grateful received the Patriots Award from the American Legion for work that I did along with Congressman Jeff Miller on the recently passed Veterans Bill, which will pump some $17 billion into health care improvements for America's veterans. So I was very honored to have received that award. And then last night in Raleigh, North Carolina, we had a wonderful event. We had about 300 people out to talk about the important issues facing our country. And this afternoon, I was earlier right here in Columbia, where we held a rally on the need to expand Medicaid for all. South Carolina is one of those states which has not accepted the Affordable Care Act's willingness to expand Medicaid. In this case, it means 300,000 people in South Carolina will not get health insurance who otherwise would at no cost to the state of South Carolina. And tonight we're going to do an event here as well, and tomorrow we go on to Mississippi. So we're on the road. It's something I enjoy doing, and the reason I do it is I believe in my heart of hearts that we are not a blue state or a red state. But I believe that on most of the important issues facing the middle class and working families of this country, there is, in fact, widespread agreement. And I think one of the problems is progressives have turned their backs on many, many states in this country, and it's about time we get into those states, start educating, start organizing, start increasing voter turnout, because I think there are a lot of people who are hurting in these states who really need government to start working for them. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's marvelous. And what do you see as the summer is rolling along and we're getting closer and closer to going back, to Congress going back? Mitch McConnell has come out and said that if he becomes the Senate Majority Leader, he's going to attach riders to every single bill that'll basically force Obama to shut down the government. Your thoughts on all that?
Well, it's not surprising. It's just another overreach. These guys have been playing obstructionist politics from the day Barack Obama was elected. They said no to any significant legislation which will improve the lives of working families. They have run up a record-breaking number of filibusters. So it doesn't surprise me at all that that's what McConnell will say. What our job is now in the remaining months that we have before the election, I think the entire election is going to hinge on voter turnout. It's as simple as all that. What the Koch brothers, who are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into these elections, want, what Mitch McConnell wants, what the Republicans want, is a low voter turnout. They want people not to participate in the political process, not to stand up and fight for their rights. What the pundits tell us, Tom, is that the projection is that about 60% of the American people are not going to vote in November. And if that happens, I would say there's a pretty good likelihood the Republicans will gain control over the Senate, because that means that the vast, overwhelming 70, 80% of low-income working people are not going to be voting, people of color are not going to be voting, young people are not going to be voting, and all of that works to benefit Republicans. If we can increase that voter turnout from 40 to 50%, which is not certainly a revolutionary development here, half of the people voting, my guess is the Democrats would do very, very well in the Senate, maybe even gain some seats, and probably regain control over the House. But what we have got to do is reach out to people who are disillusioned with the political process, who are not registered to vote, who really don't know much about what's going on, and make them understand that these are life and death issues for them in terms of what we're dealing with. Are people going to have health care, or are they not? Are their jobs going to go to China? Or are we going to get companies to reinvest in America? Are we going to raise the minimum wage so that people don't have to live in abject poverty when they're working 40 hours a week? Are we going to make higher education affordable and reduce interest rates for those students who are carrying significant debt right now? Are we going to move toward pay equity for women so they're not getting 70 or 75 cents on the dollar of what men are getting? Are we going to address the issue of climate change and cut carbon emissions and move to energy efficiency and sustainable energies? These are the issues that are right there on the table. And if working people and lower-income people do not participate, if the Koch brothers are successful in electing candidates whose sole interest is to make the rich richer, this country is going to be in very, very difficult straits.
And Mitch McConnell in this conference sponsored by the Koch brothers, where he and Joni Ernst and a bunch of others were, kissing the shoes, I guess, of these billionaires. He said, this is from The Nation, they have a transcript of it, quote, "The worst day of my political life was when President George W. Bush signed McCain-Feingold into law in the early part of his administration. All Citizens United did was to level the playing field for corporate speech. We now have, I think, the most free and open system we've had in modern times. The Supreme Court allowed all of you," he's speaking to the billionaires, "to participate in the process in a variety of different ways. You can give to the candidate of your choice. You can give to Americans for Prosperity. A variety of different ways to push back against the party of government."
Well, is being very honest. He has, in fact, been one of the leaders. I think he provided a friend of the court statement in support of Citizens United. What he understands, that's exactly what he said. He can translate a little bit into English, but what he basically said is, look, what I, Mitch McConnell, believe is that billionaires should be able to control the political process. And for him, what freedom is about is the ability of the Koch brothers and other billionaires to spend as much money as they want to elect people like Mitch McConnell and others, whose job it is then to represent the people who fund their campaigns. That's their definition of freedom. Now, I want to say on that issue that the vast majority of the American people, whether they're Republicans, moderates, independents, Democrats, disagree with Mitch McConnell. They understand that what Citizens United is about is allowing billionaires to undermine American democracy. They do not see the ability to buy elections as free speech. And as I hope most listeners know, within, I suspect, the month, I'm not quite sure, or 6 weeks, there will be legislation on the floor of the Senate, which I helped write, which will be a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. And there is no issue that I can think of that is more important than that. Because no matter what you're concerned about, whether you're concerned about health care or education or the need for job creation or global warming or foreign policy, whatever it may be, tax reform, all of those issues are impacted by Citizens United. Because what the Koch brothers are doing right now is breaking all precedent in the amounts of money, not only the money that they're spending in campaigns, but all of the organizations that they have funded. So every night there's another guy on television from some organization, if people don't know it, it's an organization funded by the Koch brothers. It is a very radical attempt to move this country in an extremely reactionary way. Things that I get very bothered about, the media, corporate media will talk about, well, yes, the Koch brothers are spending a whole lot of money, but they don't really talk about what these guys. And what we know is that back in 1980, David Koch ran for vice president of the United States on the Libertarian Party. And we have their platform. And if people want it, they can go to my website, sanders.senate.gov. We have it there. And it's very clear what these guys stand for. And this is, what they stand for is repealing all campaign finance law, ending Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, ending the concept of the minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera.
It's pretty radical.
It is very radical.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. He'll be taking your calls right after the break in our national town hall meeting, a day early here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Brunch with Bernie. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And be sure to check out Senator Sanders' website, sanders.senate.gov. Facebook, you can easily find it. And welcome back. Steve in Phoenix, Arizona, watching on Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Senator Sanders. I urge you to run as a Democrat in the coming election, and I guarantee you will open up so many eyes in the debates. It'll be great. Now, the question I have for you is, after taking office, hopefully, and I think you will, would you consider reinstating the fairness doctrine in relation to the media? And I thank you, sir, and I'll take your answer off air.
Well, Steve, let me tell you this. I believe that one of the very serious problems facing our country is the degree to which huge media conglomerates own and control what the American people see, hear, and read. And I'm not just talking about Fox, and I'm not just talking about the fact that some 95% of talk radio, I mean, we cherish Thom Hartmann because Thom is one of the few out there who is presenting us with a progressive and alternative point of view, because 95% of talk radio is extreme right-wing or extreme right-wing, and is sponsored by, these large companies who want the American people to hear that. So what I will tell you, Steve, is that the idea, in one way or another, I'm not exactly sure the best way to do it, but certainly we have got to break this monopoly that corporate America has on the media, and we need other points of view. And what drives me nuts is the fact that on virtually every important issue facing the American people, there is far too little discussion. So if it's not an important issue, the media will spend weeks on it. If it's an important issue, we'll have relatively little discussion. All that I have seen tells me that jobs are the top of the agenda for what the American people want. Real unemployment is 12%. Youth unemployment, 20%. African-American youth unemployment, 35%. It seems to me this is a discussion that we should be having day after day after day. How do we create the millions of decent-paying jobs? Do you hear that discussion terribly often on TV or radio? Not really. Trade policy, which, by the way, was developed by both Republicans and Democrats. We have lost some 50, 60,000 factories in the last 15 years, a lot of it because of disastrous trade policies that allow these companies to shut down in America, move to China. Steve, you hear a whole lot of discussion on TV about our disastrous trade policies? I don't think so. Inequality and the fact that the rich are getting richer at the expense of everybody else, you do hear it occasionally, but nowhere near the degree that we should be focusing on it. So yes, Steve, I think how we deal with the concentration of ownership in media is a huge issue, and one that I certainly think has to be dealt with.
Yeah, it's including by the Sherman Act, right?
Yes, I do think so, yes. So instead of seeing more media mergers, we should see more diversity in the media for sure.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. We're going to hit a break in just like 2 seconds here. So, in fact,
okay, well, I think Steve asked a very, very important question. And anyone who wants to change this country is going to have to do a lot of thinking about understanding about how people get the information they get, why we talk about certain issues, and why we don't talk about other issues.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us, our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie, a day early here Thursday in our third hour. We'll be back with your calls from Senator Sanders right after this. 20 minutes past the hour. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, a day early. Senator Sanders taking your calls. Amy in Madison, Wisconsin. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, Tom and Bernie, I have good news.
Okay.
The Department of Vocational Rehabilitation contacted two local brothers who are small businessmen, and sometimes back the Republicans are giving me a chance at their grocery store to work.
That's great.
Well, congratulations, Amy. Best of luck to you.
Amy?
Yeah, it's different than the Koch brothers.
Yeah. Did you have a question for Bernie, Amy, or did you just want to share the good news?
I just wanted to say that the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation really helps the disabled.
That's great.
Well, that is great,
Amy, thank you.
Congratulations, and good luck on your job.
Amen. Lisa in Huntington Beach, California. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Senator. I was wondering, do you think progressives may be alienating working class and maybe middle class Americans when, in the name of the environment, they impose measures that end up hitting working people in the pocketbook, even if that's not the intention, like cap and trade? Gas may go up at the pump. Bus fare may go up. They take away our plastic bags and make us buy bags. All these things that just hit working people the hardest, and they're intended to encourage conservation. Maybe they do, or maybe we're already conserving as much as we can if we're struggling. These things just hit working people in the pocketbook.
Okay, well, Lisa, let me respond by saying this. I do understand where you're coming from. That's what the Republicans. That's the line that the Republicans push. They say, "Oh, well, if you're concerned about global warming, that's going to mean more economic adversity and hardship for working families." I don't believe that. I believe two things. Number one, Lisa, in terms of global warming, we are, according to the scientific community, and there's no longer a debate about it, we are facing a global crisis which must be addressed. No alternatives. And that means that we have got to move away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and to such sustainable energies as wind, solar, geothermal, and others. And if we do not significantly reduce carbon emissions, if the planet continues to warm, if our oceans continue to warm, our kids and our grandchildren are going to be living in an uninhabitable or a world in which things are going to be very, very difficult. We're already seeing, the kinds of drought that California is experiencing. We've seen a whole lot of flooding, extreme weather disturbances, major changes in the oceans, and so forth and so on. So I think this is an issue we have to deal with. Now, the question is, how do you deal with it in a way that does not adversely impact working people? And the ways that you can do it. Senator Barbara Boxer and I introduced a major global warming bill which called for a tax on carbon. But what we also did is raised huge sums of money which we plow right back into the pockets of working people, so that if their costs go up, they are covered as a result of that. Also, when you transform the energy system and you move to weatherization and you move to energy efficiency, we have the potential to create a significant number of new jobs. So I think we can design public policy that reverses global warming, that protects the environment, but also protects and in some cases improves lives for working families.
Kevin in Santa Fe, New Mexico, listening to KTRC 1260. Kevin, you're on the air.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Bernie. Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to ask Senator Sanders if he would sponsor a bill that would give lapel cams and dash cams to every police department in the United States to help cut down on these killings and these, like in Ferguson, because it's known that having the lapel cam or having the dash cam, the guy did have a dash cam, can cut down on these types of incidents. But also, if they are going to be wielding the power of life and death over our fellow citizens, I think that there should be documentation of what happens.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Kevin. A number of years ago, I got some money, I believe it was for the Sheriff's Department in Vermont, for videotape cameras to be placed in police cars. So the idea of having cameras to record the work of police officers does make sense to me, and I think you're right. It'll make officers more conscious about how they are behaving. I think that makes sense.
Janet in Kathleen, Georgia. You're on the air, Senator Sanders.
Yes, good afternoon, Senator and Professor. Thank you so much for taking my call. My question has to do with the War Powers Act. The President sent military advisors to Iraq in June of this year. It's my understanding that Congress has the right of approval or disapproval within 60 days, and there's been no vote.
The answer is that the War Powers Act means that the United States Congress must give approval or support if the president takes military action. I think, Janet, the question is, what do we define by military action? In my view, the president has the executive authority to initiate, for example, airstrikes. I don't think he needs the approval of Congress. Certainly, if we are going to be putting troops in any significant way in harm's way, if we're going to put combat troops back on the ground in Iraq or any place else, he does need the approval of the United States Congress, and that's something that I would strongly oppose. I think right now in Iraq you have a very, very difficult situation. I think the response has got to be not just the United States but international, and I think we can have some real military impact along with other countries without getting our troops back on the ground and in harm's way. And that would be my position.
And we have what, Shane? Oh, here's the break. He said 3 seconds. I thought he said 30 seconds. Perfect timing, Senator. We will be back with more of your questions for Senator Bernie Sanders in just a moment as we do our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting with Senator Sanders a day early here today in the third hour of our program. Yes, we are live. It's Thursday. It's our third hour, 2:28 Eastern time. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov. And you can check out our new video at greenworldrising.org. Senator Sanders is in it. Welcome back, Thom Hartmann. Bernie Sanders on the line with us, our Brunch with Bernie hour, a day early. And John in Northville, New York. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Well, thank you for taking my call. And, Tom, I appreciate your program immensely. It's enlightening to have your take on everything. And Bernie, Senator Bernie, I have a question. In all fairness, as they do in athletics, for instance, and running our homes, we put a cap we have to manage our spending. Mm-hmm. Why can't we put a cap on all elections, especially major ones, where the people that are running will only have so much money to spend? In all fairness, they'll be able to learn how to spend our money and do our business for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John, for that important question. I don't know that that's going to be a mechanism to learn how to do good budgeting for the government, but I think in terms of the electoral process, you are absolutely right, which is why I believe very much we should move toward public funding of elections. What we have right now is a campaign finance system that is a disaster. I think at the beginning of the show, Tom was quoting what Mitch McConnell was saying. He loves the current system. In fact, he wants to go further. He wants to remove all restrictions on campaign finance so the Koch brothers can directly give Republican candidates tens and tens of millions of dollars and don't have to worry about independent expenditures. But what John is talking about is moving toward public funding of elections. I think that's what he's talking about. And what that means is if you can show, you want to run for governor of New York, you want to run for senator of Vermont, whatever, if you can show that you have strong support and get a significant numbers of small donations, then you will be able to get public funding to run, but there will be a cap on what you can spend. And some states already have that provision, and I think it works pretty well. Bottom line here is that democracy is not supposed to be about wealthy individuals or candidates supported by big business and billionaires outspending opponents by 10 to 1. And what you have now is it is increasingly difficult for a middle-class person who is not beholden to wealthy and corporate interest to run for office. So I do believe very strongly in public funding of elections. The immediate task in terms of campaign finance reform, overturn Citizens United. Secondly, we have to move to public funding of elections. And when you do that and start electing candidates who are not wealthy or beholden to the wealthy, I think you're going to see a real change in what government does for working people.
James in Spokane, you're on the air with Senator Sanders. James in Spokane, Washington?
Yeah, Tom, good evening, gentlemen. Good afternoon. So I was just brushing my teeth.
Okay. Your question for Bernie?
Yeah, let me set this up first. Using your terms, the big picture, Tom. My take on the global economy and the oligarchs is we've reached peak oil. They become vastly wealthy. They want some oil left for they and theirs. I think they want us cowed, corralled, or dead, fleeced and deceased. Are they not attempting to call the herd, so to speak?
Well, I wouldn't look at it exactly that way, but this is what I would tell you, James. And this is really quite incredible. When we talk about income and wealth inequality in America, where the top 1% owns about 38% of the wealth, the bottom 60% own all of 2.3% of the wealth, where 95% of all new income is going to the top 1%. Internationally, globally, what you're looking at is 85 of the wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of the world's population. I think that's what, about 3 billion people, Tom?
Yeah. Well, it's it would be about 3.5 billion
people.
Yeah.
So you got 85 people. You got 85 people into a kind of small room. They will own more wealth than 3.5 billion people. So what we see in the United States in terms of the growth of income and wealth inequality is an international phenomenon. And that's what one of the manifestations of globalism is about, globalization, is that fewer and fewer people are owning more and more of the resources and the wealth and the income of the world. And how you address that issue, how you create a global economic system by which we improve the lives of the poorest people rather than exploit them, while we create decent paying jobs for middle class people throughout the industrialized world. That is the challenge of our time, and how you do all of that while fighting back and trying to reverse climate change. That is where we are right now, and it's going to require political struggle in countries all over the world to start putting people into office who are representing ordinary people rather than just the ruling classes of their own country. So it is a huge task. But the problem that we're seeing in terms of income and wealth inequality is not just an American issue. It is most certainly an international issue.
Fred in Woodruff, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom and Senator Sanders. I'm a 75-year-old Vietnam-era Air Force vet, and I have a question about VA policy. I'm very satisfied with the VA here, and the Rhinelander has a satellite clinic of Iron Mountain, Michigan. Fantastic service. But I had a procedure done up in Iron Mountain that was an abdominal scan, and it was required by the vet, or recommended by the vets, and I have a question about the policy of the VA. When I called out, they said that they do not. I'm also on Medicare,
yep.
And I have a supplemental, and I got a bill for this procedure, and I called the VA, and they're great. They said, well, the policy is if Medicare does not cover it, they will not forward it to my supplemental policy. So, and I called my supplemental policy, and they said they would pay it if it could be forwarded. So there's a catch-22 here. There's a catch-22.
Thank you for the question, and it's an ongoing concern that we hope to rectify within the VA. It can save the VA money, and you've touched on an issue that our committee is, in fact, working on. So thank you very much for the question.
Kurt in Los Angeles. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Hi, Senator Sanders.
Hi, Kurt.
Hey, I just want you to know, if I get to my question, I just want you to know I love you like the uncle I've never had, and if you do decide to run for president, I know where I can find some surplus minibuses for auction, and I will pick up at least one of them and make sure everybody in my neighborhood gets to the polls. You can run for president.
Thank you very much, Kurt.
Yeah, I almost picked up one last week, $4,000 for a 2005 Aero Elite 290. Seats 33 people.
Not bad at all.
Picked it up.
So what's your question, Kurt?
I almost picked it up. Well, my question is, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I talked to you about developing some sort of government corporation seal of approval, something that would be a good corporation type of thing, so people can seek out corporations that support the local economy, that pay their taxes and do other things.
Right.
I was wondering how that's coming
Bernie's
along.
got it. Okay, let's ask him.
Well, Kurt asked a very good question. And the essence of the question is, we know that there are corporations in this country who are profitable in America, but who shut down here, moved to China because they could make even more money. We have seen recently and in the past companies who are moving their headquarters abroad in order to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. And I think what Kurt is talking about is, why don't we develop policies which penalize those companies who are deserting our country and the people of our country? And why don't we reward those companies who are doing the right thing by paying people decent wages, by reinvesting in America, by paying their taxes in this country? And I think he is exactly right. And there are a number of pieces of legislation which address that issue in various ways. But I think Kurt is absolutely on to something. The idea that we give tax breaks to companies that shut down and move abroad, or give corporate welfare to similar type companies, makes no sense to me at all.
Sam in Woodstock, Illinois. Quick question for Bernie. We got about a minute and a half here.
Hey, is it possible to demilitarize the police without a buyback program? And is it possible to even pass the buyback program and or just disarm them at all, considering how armed our civilians are?
Well, I think this issue of, obviously, the militarization of police departments around the country has come to a fore as a result of Ferguson. And I think what people saw there has made a whole lot of people very, very uncomfortable. So I think when Congress reconvenes, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion, and I will support the demilitarization of police departments. At the end of the day, a good police department is one that is integrated into the community, where people feel that the police department is there working for them. They feel comfortable with the police officers. Not a situation in which people perceive a police department to be an occupying entity. And that gives off all of the wrong signals. So I think there is a lot to be learned from Ferguson, and one of the lessons is demilitarization of police departments.
We'll be back with more of your questions for Senator Sanders in our Brunch with Bernie hour in just a moment. Be sure to check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. And also you can check out the new video that we've done, narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio, starring in part Senator Bernie Sanders. It's over at greenworldrising.org.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And while we're talking about websites, we just completely reinvented ours, too. ThomHartmann.com just completely got rebooted from the ground up. Check it out. Welcome back. Joel in Temple, Georgia, watching Free Speech TV on cable. Hey, Joel, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. And to Senator Bernie Sanders, I really appreciate hearing you on TV when I see you on the floor. My question is, I was on a VRAP program. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Give me a hint.
That's the program that...
It's the Veterans Rehabilitation Program that was going through the unemployment for veterans who wanted to go back to school.
Yep, of course.
They only gave it to us for 12 months, and I was wondering why didn't they extend it for 2 years for 24 months? Because the colleges, if you go to college, it takes more than a year to go to college.
Joel, I won't swear to you, because I don't have the paper in front of me, but if my memory is correct, that is exactly what we tried to do in some legislation, to extend the VRAP program. What we did manage to do in the recent piece of veterans legislation that was passed is a very good thing, and that is to make in-state tuition available to all veterans. a lot of veterans move around, and they were forced to pay out-of-state tuition, which could mean many, many thousands of dollars. They couldn't go to school. So we addressed that educational issue. But the issue that you raised, if I am not mistaken, I won't swear to you, but I think it is something that we did try to do. We weren't successful, but it's still on the agenda, exactly what you're talking about.
You know, if I was really cynical, Senator, I'd say that the giving people 1 year of college when, you know, most basic degrees require 2 or arguably 4, is just feeding them into a system where the second year they're going to get a huge loan and the banksters are going to make out and the for-profit colleges are going to make out.
Yeah.
What do you think?
But all I can say, Tom, is that one of the very important pieces of legislation passed in recent years was the post-9/11 GI educational bill. And the result of that is that, again, if my memory is correct, I don't have the figures in front of me, I think about 1 million veterans from the post-9/11 era or their family members are now going to college. Yeah. And that's a very big deal. What we did also put into this recent piece of legislation, something that I wanted very much, is that the widows of men or women who were lost in war in Iraq and Afghanistan, they will now be able to take advantage of the GI, the post-9/11 GI educational bill. So you're going to see a lot of folks, mostly women, now being able to go to college or go to graduate school on that bill, which I think is exactly the right thing to have done.
That is absolutely great. We just have 30 seconds to the break, Senator. Anything you want to riff on?
Well, just staying on the vets issue. I just talked to a veteran today right here in South Carolina who told me that the care that he is getting is very, very good. What we are doing right now in terms of focusing on VA health care is to make sure the quality is strong, but equally important, to make sure that when people apply to get into the VA healthcare system, they can do that in a timely manner. And one of the ways we're doing that is by putting $5 billion into seeing the VA hire new doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel so they'll be able to better serve veterans in a timely manner.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. We'll be back with more of your questions, your calls for Senator Sanders right after this. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Brunch with Bernie, a day early. Senator Sanders taking your calls. Eric in Tacoma, Washington. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, hey, how's it going, Tom? Senator Sanders. As we all know, Senator, the purchasing power of the United States dollar is in kind of decline, and I was wondering what you think of states such as Utah passing legislation to make American Eagle silver and American Eagle gold coins as legal tender to purchase goods and services.
Eric, you'll have to forgive me on that one. I really have not done a lot of thinking or reading about it.
Ken in Chicago. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Bernie. How are you? I'm Ken. Hey, by the way, Tom, loved the Crash 2016. Incredible.
Thank you.
Book. Bernie, I had a question for you. Congress members are, I guess you'd say, public servants. They're supposed to be people that represent the people. When I do the numbers real quick, I come up to somewhere around $177 an hour or so that a Congress member makes. I'm wondering what would happen, and how could it happen, that we could make senators or Congress's pay equal to the median income of the people they serve. And the reason why I say that is it would, as well as, of course, bring in more of the common folk like me into Congress, so to speak, but it would also incentivize people in Congress to raise pay in their states, therefore being able to raise their own pay. I was just wondering what your thought was on that.
Well, that's an interesting concept. I don't know that I have thought about it too much. I think I think a lot of people are appropriately angry and frustrated with Congress. But the effort to lower congressional benefits, I know I sound a little self-serving here, but to lower them, the end result of that might well be that you'll even have more wealthier people. And some people say, we shouldn't pay members of Congress anything, $0 or $10 a week. And the end result of that would mean that the only people who would serve would be very, very wealthy, and you would end up with a House of Lords. So I think at the end of the day, the only way that I really know that you make Congress respond to the needs of working people is by electing people who are going to do the right thing and by holding them accountable. And that really speaks most significantly to campaign finance reform. So long as folks like the Koch brothers and other billionaires are able to elect the candidates of their choice, you're going to have a Congress and governors around this country who are far more interested in the needs of the wealthy and powerful than ordinary people. And I think, second of all, if you want a responsive governor or legislature in your own state, the issue we talked about a moment ago in terms of public funding of elections would be a step in the right direction.
Donald in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, hi, Bernie. That was just a quick question. If we don't take the Senate, we don't take the House, and we do get a Democratic president and a vice president, where does that leave us? I mean, is that president going to be nothing but a lame duck for the next 4 years? I'll let you take it from there.
Well, obviously it's going to tie the hands in a very significant way. If the Republicans, and we're talking about right-wing Republicans, control the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, clearly the president can veto legislation. But as I think Tom was talking about earlier, Mitch McConnell has some ideas about how we can put riders into legislation so that if the president vetoes that, he could be accused of shutting down the government and doing other quote-unquote terrible things. So I think it would be a disaster for this country. It would put the president on the defensive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we have got to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that that does not happen. And that speaks to voter turnout. The Republicans win when people do not come out to vote. The Republicans lose when there are large voter turnouts. Our job is to make sure that there are big voter turnouts.
Gus in Deerfield, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. In light of everything that's gone on or not gone on in the last 6 years, I'd like to see what you think about the idea of eliminating our elected officials, not the government completely. We still need the government, but eliminate the elected officials and allow the people to vote the issue. So they could set up some kind of national registry for voting and let the people decide whether they want immigration or whatever the other issue is, and eliminate the lining of the pockets of the elected officials who refuse to do what the people want.
Okay, and Bernie, we've got about two minutes to the end of the show.
Well, Gus, in all due respect, I don't think that is a terribly practical solution. I think you could move toward national referendum. I mean, many states do have that. But I think there are dozens and dozens of issues that come across senators' desks every single week, and I don't think you're going to have votes every day on important issues. It's just not going to work that way. I think, look, we've gotten a couple of questions kind of dancing around this basic issue. How do you make government responsive to the needs of ordinary people? That's what Gus is saying in his way. He says, why isn't Congress listening to the needs of ordinary people? Now, I think his idea of referendums every other day is not a practical solution. The practical solution is the old-fashioned, difficult process of electing people who serve ordinary Americans. That's what it's about. If you have a government that works for ordinary Americans, we will have a situation where our people have health care, where they have decent-paying jobs, where the wages in this country are decent, where women's rights are protected. We will not have that if government is owned and controlled by big money interests. So there's no cute way, in my view, no magic formula. The way that happens is through grassroots organizing, getting people out to vote, educating people about the important issues facing our country.
So tag, we're all in. Senator Sanders, thanks so much for being with us again today.
My pleasure, Tom.
Always a pleasure.